Good morning, everyone. The last few months have been very tough on Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and we all recognize that isolation is very difficult, and physical distancing for a lot of families is very hard. But the public health measures that we have put in place are solely about protecting you and your families. And during this pandemic, we have focused our priorities to put supports in place for both social and the economic well-being of all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Supports for residents, families, and businesses in a number of areas, like working with the federal and the provincial government to put initiatives in place that will in turn allow employers to protect and to support their employees. So essentially what we're talking about is putting measures in place that employers can keep their employees on their payroll. But we also put protection in place for tenants, for rental properties, so residents do not face eviction. We put in place $200 billion in contingency funding to address the impacts of this pandemic and the reduced oil prices. Within our Department of Tourism, Culture, Industry and Innovation, we have supported businesses by deferring loan payments. We have set up a community food helpline, and we put free childcare services for essential workers, and the list can go on. But every single piece of work that we have done is to protect and support you as we navigate our way through this pandemic together. If we reflect upon the past few months, it is not hard to see how changes in our life and our communities in the way we actually live in Newfoundland and Labrador. So you've been adjusting. We know that we cannot wait this virus out, and we want to thank you for how you have adapted during these difficult times. But this hasn't come without financial hardship for many homes across our province, as some residents have been having difficulty keeping the income at their current levels pre-COVID. We have been in close contact with businesses in our province, and we've heard their concerns, and we know many of them are struggling as well. The supports that we have put in place is to help ease the burden and the financial hardship that this virus has created on just about every pocket in our province. That is why today I am pleased to announce just over $50 million in financial measures for electricity customers who have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. So to help you, we are providing a one-time credit on your electricity bills to both residential and general service customers. This will include businesses and other organizations whose rates are based on Holyrood fuel cost. This will be in place as early as July, which is literally just 6 weeks away. The credit is expected to vary based on customers' usage and is made possible due to the fuel savings at the Holyrood thermal generating facility. So rather than provide these forecasted fuel savings monthly over the next year, which is the usual manner, we are requesting that the Board of Commissioners of the Public Utilities Board to adopt a policy so that a credit will be dispersed immediately and upfront. This is to help people when they need it the most. The Public Utilities Board will determine the details of this initiative, including the exact amount and the timing of the credit. Now, in addition to that announcement, we are also providing a $2.5 million to waive the interest on overdue accounts. This will be available for residential and general service customers who require flexible bill payments. So in a nutshell, what this means is that customers who have been unable to keep up with their electricity bill payments can now breathe a little sigh of relief. It includes residents, businesses, and other organizations who are struggling as a result of COVID-19. The interest waiver will come into effect on June 1st and will be available for a period of 15 months. But as Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and Newfoundland Power have already established residential and business customers who are having challenges paying their bills, we know that they will not be disconnected if they encounter problems. But they expect customers will be required to make agreed upon monthly payments and keep your accounts in good standing. So the one-time credit and the interest relief measures are further steps that we are taking to help ease the pressure that we are feeling right now as a result of this pandemic. It is about providing supports to make a life a little easier during some of the toughest times that we've had to face in the history of this province. We're doing what we can to support you, and we will continue this work. So I will now turn it over to Minister Coady to provide some further details on these measures.
Thank you, Premier, and good morning, everyone. During these unprecedented times, many people and businesses have faced struggling with the financials, struggling with adapting to the new normal. It is our hope that the measures we are announcing today will help electricity customers to deal with some of the impacts of COVID-19. As Premier Ball stated, residential and general service customers, including businesses and other organizations whose rates are based on the Holyrood fuel costs, will receive a one-time credit on their bill as early as July. This credit is made possible due to fuel savings at the Holyrood thermal generating facility and is expected to vary based on customers' usage. Allow me to explain. Electricity rates for Newfoundland and Labrador's island interconnected system customers are based on the utility's cost of providing service, including of the cost of fuel consumed at the Holyrood plant. In recent months, global fuel prices have collapsed due to a price war, oil demand, and of course COVID-19. Because of this, the fuel price forecast for Holyrood has dropped considerably. Normally, this decrease in fuel prices would have resulted in a rate decrease for customers reflected in rates for the period July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. However, given the difficult financial times many are finding themselves in, we believe an upfront one-time on-bill credit would be much more helpful for customers than a small monthly decrease over the next 12 months. We've spoken to the Board of Commissioners of the Public Utilities to adopt a policy that this rate adjustment will be provided to customers as a one-time bill credit. The pub will determine the details of this initiative, including the amount and timing of the credit. Newfoundland Hydro and Newfoundland Power have established COVID-19 policies to help ensure that residential and business customers that are having challenges paying their bill will not be disconnected at this time. And options for flexible bill payments are available to help keep their accounts in good standing. We're also announcing today that for customers who require flexible bill payments, government is providing $2.5 million to waive the interest on overdue accounts for residential and general service customers throughout the province. This includes residents, businesses, and other organizations that are struggling as a result of COVID-19 and will be for a period of 15 months commencing June 1st, 2020. Customers will be required to continue to make agreed upon monthly payments to their accounts. Customers who find themselves in difficult financial situation may call Newfoundland Power at 1-800-663-2802 or Newfoundland Hydro at 1-888-737-1296 to discuss options regarding flexible payment arrangements. Through these financial measures for ratepayers, including the one-time credit, interest relief, no disconnection policy, and flexible bill payment options, government, in partnership with Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and Newfoundland Power, is doing everything possible to ensure residents are protected during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Coady, and we will now turn it over to the media for some questions.
Thank you, Minister Coady and Premier Ball. Good morning. My name is Lisa Lawler. I am the Media Relations Manager for the Department of Natural Resources, and I will be the moderator on the call today. We will now begin with reporter questions. I have a list of everyone who has registered, and as we've been doing for a while, we will pass through the list by order of registration. So everyone is able to ask 2 questions and 1 follow-up. We will then proceed with additional rounds of single questions as required until 12 p.m. I ask that you keep your phones on mute until called upon. Up first is Peter Cowan with CBC.
Peter?
Peter?
Yes?
There you go. We got you.
Yep. Sorry, lost the call there.
Okay.
Question for the Premier. Other provinces have put forward money from provincial coffers. This is essentially just giving people money they would have gotten back already and just giving it to them sooner. Why isn't the province contributing to this?
Well, some have put forward money, some have deferred utility bills, and in this particular case here, the province is put forwarding some money in terms of interest waiver. That will be at a total of $2.5 million. So there is some provincial money in this, and you're correct. Most of it would come from the rate stabilization program, which occurs, annually at July time. So there is provincial money in this, and many provinces have just deferred payments. This is about providing a relief in the next 6 weeks.
Can you give people an idea of what's the amount of money they can expect to see back on their bills?
Well, that's a good
for
question.
an average customer.
Yeah, that's a good question because we know people want to see what is the impact that would have on their utility bills. And, the Public Utilities Board will determine the timing and the impact. But what we can say is that on a normal basis, there's about $60 million that will be spent on utility bills within the province on a monthly basis. This program here is worth just over $50 million. So, if you just take that and do the simple math on that, this is providing nearly $50 million of that $60 million monthly relief on a one-time basis.
Right, but to do the math, can you give people an idea? Like $50 million across everyone is kind of difficult for people to understand. Are you able to give some more details for people on what exactly they can expect to see?
Well, it's it can be calculated. Not everybody has the same electricity needs. Some people would use a combination, as an example, of wood stoves, in a combination of electricity. Some will have oil and electricity. So everybody is different. But the best, I guess, the closest that we could come to this, the Public Utilities Board will make the determination working with the utilities, but it's really somewhere between 80 and 85%, and the officials at Natural Resources are using numbers like this. But if you look at the overall monthly payment of around $60 million, this program here is worth just over $50 million. So you divide that by the number of customers, and you'll come up with that answer.
Peter, it really will depend on the methodology used by the Public Utilities Board, and as the Premier said, that methodology will be determined by the Public Utilities Board. And it also depends on usage. So as the Premier pointed out, some people have more usage than others, and they can expect more of a one-time credit. So that methodology will be done by the Public Utilities Board over the next number of weeks, and it will determine what the impact will be for every customer.
Well, this will be a significant amount on the July electricity bills.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Mike Connors with NTV.
So I guess in some respects, this is just kind of moving existing money around. Why is it that you felt why exactly do you feel that the upfront rebate is a better way to go than spreading it out over the course of 12 months?
Well, we think that many families and electricity users across our province right now, they've been struggling. There's no question that no matter who we are in this province, you have felt the difficulty associated with COVID-19. So making this one-time payment will have a significant impact on electricity bills. There's other measures that we put in place as a province, and we've been working very closely with the federal government on initiatives as well. So this is really about providing the immediate relief as opposed to waiting over a 12-month period, and you will see a smaller payment on your electricity bills. This will be a significant impact on your July bill.
I guess longer term, we're still looking at big problems with electricity prices with Muskrat Falls. Can you give any update on how things are going with Ottawa in terms of working on rate mitigation?
Yeah, so the work is ongoing, and Minister Coady is here directly involved in this, as well as intergovernmental affairs and finance. So there's a large number of officials that are meeting regularly on rate mitigation, working with the federal government. And so, The work is ongoing. It's still going as we anticipated, recognizing that, Muskrat Falls right now is in a care and maintenance mode, but the work with the officials level, working with the federal government, is ongoing for rate mitigation as the impact of Muskrat Falls would have. So it's really mitigating the cost of Muskrat Falls on rates for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
Do you have any sense of when construction will be able to resume on the Muskrat Falls site?
That's a question I guess that would be better asked to NALCOR. It's very difficult when you determine it could only occur, I guess, when you can do so safely. We know that some construction sites around our province, like mining and so on, are starting to get back to work. But Muskrat Falls, as well as some other locations, are still in a care and maintenance mode. But the determination on when you can safely go back construction at Muskrat Falls, that'll be determined by the contractors in NALCOR.
I can tell you that protocols and guidelines are being established to make sure the safety for employees is there before any ramp-up will happen.
Thank you. The next question is from John Woodside, allnewfoundlandlabrador.com.
Good morning. So my question is that Efficiency Canada ranked Newfoundland and Labrador dead last in its study of energy efficiency programs across the country, found that nearly 40% of this province is living in energy poverty, which they defined as spending more than 6% of their income, their after-tax income, on power bills. And, this is among the highest levels across the country. So while this one-time payment is going to be helpful for people, I'm wondering if you could speak to what else is being done to keep power bills affordable over the long term.
So there's a number of initiatives that we would be doing across all levels of government, and we know you're absolutely right. It's a lot would have to do with those, these calculations that you've just mentioned, John. It's got to do with the amount of electricity. It's got to do with our environment, the colder environment that we live in compared to other provinces. But if you look at the price per kilowatt per hour in Newfoundland and Labrador, you would see that we're nowhere near the bottom. Matter of fact, we will probably be in the higher half, in the top 50% of lower electricity costs on a kilowatt per hour. So in large part, that calculation is due to the amount of usage of electricity in Newfoundland and Labrador. That said, there's programs that we could put in place with Newfoundland Labrador Housing that could help retrofit some homes and make sure that we would keep the use of electricity down. Also, as part of rate mitigation, there's electrification of companies or organizations that will be using fuel as an example. So there's a number of ongoing initiatives, but you're absolutely right in your analysis of where we are. But yet again, that really highlights the importance of rate mitigation and mitigating the costs of Muskrat Falls and the future impacts that would have to be. Given where we are today, you can't imagine what it would be like if the cost of Muskrat Falls was left unmitigated and left to impact electricity rates in our province. It's a thing we have to do, and we're working with the federal government to be able to do that.
John, I think it's very important as well to realize the best thing we can do is keep the cost of electricity as low as possible. And that's what this government has been doing with not allowing the impact of Muskrat Falls to be felt by ratepayers in this province. And so taking Muskrat Falls out and making the changes that we've been trying to make with the federal government to our financing and making some of the other changes that we've announced in the rate mitigation plan are critically important. So keeping the rate of electricity low is very important, but also the consumption. So the Take Charge program, for example, offering and making sure that people have energy efficient homes, all very important. And those are two trajectories and two ways in which we're ensuring that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians can have affordable and effective and efficient electricity in this province.
Thank you. So if I'm hearing correctly, is this? It sounds like we're talking about a couple of things with, the importance of keeping power bills or power rates low within the Muskrat Falls context, but then there's also, electrification and energy efficiency programs to roll out to sort of manage things in the long term. Does this mean that would be a focus for this government as far as COVID-19 related economic recovery, like to maybe accelerate the pace of electrifying public buildings and rolling out electric vehicle charging we're talking about?
Well, two things. One is today's announcement is directly related to this pandemic and COVID-19. So this is about providing relief within the next few weeks for electricity users, today and in 2020. What we're talking about electrification is part of our rate mitigation plan that we announced now. I guess it's literally almost 2 years ago. And part of the work that we're doing with the federal government, with part of the highlights of that plan would be, and Minister Coady is, Natural Resources is working directly on this initiative, is to keep the demand up. And that's part of the solution for keeping rates down, electricity rates down, is keeping the demand for electricity users up. So where the opportunity presents itself to take a building and put them on electricity versus some other form of fuel, that would keep demand up and will help keep electricity rates low for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Brian Medor, VOCM.
Morning, Premier Ball and Minister Coady. This one deals just with electricity, but what about people who heat their homes with oil, wood? Their electricity bill is negligible for the most part. But if they do heat with oil or wood, they may be facing at least a similar hardship than others who have just electricity.
Well, one of the reasons why we're in the difficult situation with the finances of the province overall right now is the price of oil has dropped significantly. So those customers that use oil, they're already seeing reduced costs because of the reduced price of oil. We're seeing that even at our gas pumps. This is about electricity users. And I will say, Brian, as you know, there are very few people that would be not on electricity in our province. Most people would have some form of a combination. If you're using wood, well, that would be backstopped with electricity, so they would get the opportunity to avail of this discount. So would people that will be using oil. Some of those will be using electricity as well. So they still get the savings, but the customer that will get the most savings will be those that are exclusively using electricity. But every customer that is connected with either Newfoundland Power or Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro right now will see the benefit of this plan today.
And really the costs of what you're rolling out today are negligible to non-existent for the two primary utilities involved, Newfoundland Power and Newfoundland Hydro. Keeping in mind one is private, one is a Crown corporation. Did you consider or did you at any point think of going to those utilities for, they could have put up a little bit of their money as well? Any thoughts of that?
It's a different discussion. Not for this table today, but these are discussions that would occur with the Public Utilities Board on a normal basis of what we do in the future with those utilities. Right now, those mechanisms have been in place for long-standing. This announcement today is just giving immediate relief within the next few weeks based on the opportunity that presented itself with the rate stabilization plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is David Marr with the Telegram. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. A question on the interest relief program. It says there that customers will be required to make an agreed-upon monthly payment into their account. Does that effectively mean that electricity customers can renegotiate or can negotiate a discount on their bill, say for the next 15 months? Is that basically what that's saying?
Yes, yes. So if you are having financial difficulty and you need to reach out to Newfoundland Power or Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, you certainly can. You can speak to a customer service representative and they will make accommodations, but you have to continue to make some version of a monthly payment. That's the critical piece here, and the interest that is on that may be accrued is going to be paid for by the provincial government. So if you're a business, you're a person, and you're having difficulty, and you can't make your normal monthly payment, call your utility, make some arrangements, and any cost of doing so in terms of interest on that arrangement will be borne by the provincial government.
Okay, and then so let's say, tossing out a number that a 20% discount is negotiated for a particular household. Would there be an expectation that 20% is repaid after that 15-month period, or is it just does that discount just apply?
Absolutely, it'll be a deferred payment. So instead of paying, if you can't, if you're having financial difficulties right now and you normally pay 200 and you've decided to pay, at this point you're only able to afford 100. At some point in the future, you will have to make up those additional payments. It's deferred.
Okay, and just to be clear, so would there be any interest then on that, on those deferred payments?
No, that will be borne by the provincial government. That's the $2.5 million that we've announced today is available to pay for that interest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have went through the first round of questions, and we now have time for another round of single questions for each of the 5 reporters on the line. So up first is Peter Cowan, CBC.
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter, up next, Mike Connors, NTV.
Just on a separate note, Minister Coady, I was just wondering if you could talk about, there was a committee meeting the other day for the first time, a virtual committee meeting to prepare for potential virtual sittings of the House in the future. The report's due in July, but how realistically, how soon do you think we're going to see virtual sittings of the House?
Well, first of all, the meeting yesterday went very well. This is the select committee that was chosen last week in the House of Assembly to make recommendations on virtual proceedings for the House of Assembly. We had a really good committee meeting yesterday. We made good progress on general procedural issues related to virtual parliament, and we're having another meeting as early as Tuesday, so we're doing this as expeditiously as possible to ensure that both committees of the House of Assembly as well as Parliament itself can sit virtually. So we're making these arrangements, and we will meet on Tuesday again next week. We'll meet virtually to work through the procedural arrangements. How do people make comments from their seat, for example? How do we establish quorum? How do we establish procedures for the House of Assembly when we're doing it virtually? So we'll work through that on Tuesday. Hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll be able to work through any of the logistics that are required. As you know, the House of Commons is working through some of these logistics as well. And there are 2 things that we're working through. One is routine proceedings of the House of Assembly. That is, member statements, ministerial statements, question period, petitions as one piece, and then the second piece is around legislation and how that would go through first, second, third reading in committee. So we're making the rules as are required for those sittings. But the good thing is we will be able to do it virtually. We have established a platform in order to be able to do it virtually. Committees will be able to meet in this manner as well. So we have plans in place to do so. I will say that nothing will take the place of in-person sittings, and we're also looking at what requirements we would have in the House of Assembly to ensure we can get back to face-to-face sittings in the House of Assembly, but ensuring that we are safe and meeting all the requirements of the Chief Medical Officer.
Thank you. The next question is from John Woodside, allnewfoundlandlabrador.com.
Thank you. So I'd like to just follow up on something Mike brought up in the first round. But, Muskrat Falls is, of course, the elephant in the room, and people's bills will be skyrocketing unless the comprehensive rate mitigation plan is put in place. And to our knowledge, Nalcor hasn't officially budged on its cost projections. But even with the coronavirus, even with that aside, there's still plenty of delays going on. So while I understand the rate mitigation talks are happening with Ottawa, I'm wondering if, after ordering an issue in council to direct the Public Utilities Board in today's context to help people with their bills, are you considering similar approaches for dealing with bill increases related to Muskrat Falls? And if so, could you sort of talk about what's on the table? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Well, this is what the rate mitigation discussions are all ongoing. This is the reason why the somewhat framework was announced in February of this week, or in January of this year. So this is what rate mitigation is all about: really mitigating the cost, the full cost of Muskrat Falls, getting it back to 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's our target. So that is the primary focus on the discussions that we're having right now with the federal government, and discussions are going well and proceeding, and both agree that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians cannot afford to see this kinds of increases that they would see if Muskrat Falls left unmitigated.
next question is from Brian Medore, VOCM.
Just keeping in mind I think we heard this morning, 6 industrial customers, I believe, they don't participate in the rate stabilization plan. Is anything being considered for industry? For example, we know the Husky site in Argentia shut down, but a lot of the costs are still there.
Yeah, so there's lots of discussions, Brian. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's no question when we say that every single individual, every single business in this province has been impacted, mostly negatively impacted by this pandemic. So we're working very closely with the business community. We're working very closely with the federal government. We've seen a number of measures that have been put in place to help with liquidity, throughout this period from the federal level. And where there's gaps, that have been that we find, as an example, some of the announcements yesterday with the COA. And we were there as a provincial government to actually fill in some of those gaps as well. So clearly we've made a commitment to work with the federal government to support the business community. They're the ones that provide the jobs for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and we must have them in a good spot coming out of this health crisis as we deal with the economy in our province. So we'll be there to support the business community. They're the people that employ Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So right now there's a number of measures, both federally and provincially, that we're working on.
Thanks.
Next question is from David Murr, Telegram.
Hey there, just looking to follow up on that deferral discount one more time. I threw out 20% earlier, just as a random example. But has there been any direction provided from government, in terms of how much of a bill could be deferred as part of this program, or is it just kind of a case by case basis?
It certainly is a case-by-case basis and based on discussions that an individual or business would have with their utility. So if, as I said earlier, you'd have to speak to Newfoundland Power, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. Through those discussions, you'll arrive at a flexible bill payment. And any interest that is accrued because of that will be paid for by the provincial government through that $2.5 million. So that flexible bill payment is up to a discussion between the customer and their utility.
Thank you again.
Thank you. The time for questions has now ended. Please forward along any follow-up questions you may have to the department. Thank you for participating in the availability today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.